F1's affinity for street tracks is well known. From Monaco to Miami, the sport has a rich history of tearing around the streets of well-known cities around the world. But what about the tracks that didn't succeed and fell into obscurity? What happened to them, and why did they fail? Today, we're going to take a look at Spain's attempt to bring F1 to its streets at the Valencia Street Circuit. The Valencia Street Circuit began its life in 2007 when the then regional premier, Francisco Camps, negotiating a contract with F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone. A 7-year deal was struck between the parties, officially bringing F1 to Valencia as the European Grand Prix. This union aimed to put Valencia on the map. Brought forward by the Motorsport group, the proposed circuit would take place around Valencia's port and harbour, snaking around the various warehouses and factories that littered the area. The hope was that the area could be transformed into a prestigious residential location filled with luxury apartments, with the glitz and glamour of F1 bringing eyes and investment to the area. Herman Tilke, a designer famous for many of the venues raced at by F1 over the years, was once again given the job of designing the layout for the new track. A 5.3-kilometre long mixture of winding, fast straights, slow hairpins, and a range of tricky chicanes made up the layout of the circuit. Tilke made full use of the limited space available. Pit buildings, rather than being specifically made and built for motor racing, were created from the existing infrastructure. Some new buildings and sections were purpose-built, but a large amount of the track used was pre-existing roads, winding their way around the harbour. The infamous swing bridge was an essential part of the track both visually and practically, connecting the different sections of the harbour. Many of the 25 corners had sizable sections of runoff around them, massively reducing the risk inherent with a street track, the walls being some distance away from the track itself in many places. The inaugural race took place on 27th of July 2008. However, it wasn't the F1 race that many expected. Organisers decided that rather than throwing themselves in at the deep end with a major televised international sporting event, they would rather test the waters with a smaller, lower-profile race. Spanish F3 held the 4th and 5th rounds of the 2008 championship at the new circuit. It wasn't a particularly spectacular event, but it was successful nonetheless. It gave the organisers renewed confidence ahead of the European Grand Prix a few months later. F1 made its debut in Valencia on a glorious weekend in August. Felipe Massa, driving for Ferrari, took the maiden pole position for the track and went on to win the race, comfortably holding off a chasing McLaren driven by Lewis Hamilton. Aside from several nasty pit lane incidents, one of which saw a Ferrari mechanic heading to the local hospital, it was an uneventful race. Kimi Raikkonen's engine letting go spectacularly was perhaps the most interesting thing that occurred throughout. Long full throttle sections followed by big braking zones, combined with the track being surprisingly wide for a street circuit, all looked like the Valencia Street Circuit would be great for racing, on paper at least. The reality, however, was entirely the opposite. A mere 4 overtakes took place across the entirety of the race. During the refueling era of F1, a low number of on-track overtakes per race wasn't uncommon. But Valencia was rivaling Monaco and Hungary's numbers, despite being far wider and more forgiving thanks to ample runoff in most places. 2009 was perhaps an even worse year, with only 1 overtake taking place in the entire race. If you're enjoying this video, please consider leaving it a like and hitting that subscribe button to see more F1 content just like this. It really does help us out. Drivers were initially optimistic about the new track in 2008, with many complimenting the atmosphere of the venue and the reception received from the local fans. Rubens Barrichello and Nico Rosberg were even happy with the layout of the circuit, complimenting the quality of the facilities and track. By 2010 though, feelings amongst the drivers had drastically shifted. Several lackluster races had dampened the atmosphere of the event, and several drivers were keen to make their feelings known. Adrian Sutil commenting that the track simply wasn't interesting and that the corners were unchallenging thanks to the significant runoff that many provided. Kamui Kobayashi, having only driven there in GP2 so far, stated that he felt the track wasn't especially exciting. Especially for the fans, a sentiment echoed by Pedro de la Rosa. Nico Rosberg was one of a few drivers that maintained their stance from the opening Grand Prix in 2008, praising the combination of fast and flowing corners while not being what was typically expected of a street track, something that Nico Hülkenberg also agreed with. The 2010 race did provide a slightly better spectacle than previous years, with 17 overtakes taking place throughout the race. However, it wasn't until the following year that a noticeable improvement occurred. 2011 saw the introduction of DRS, the drag reduction system. When a chasing driver was within 1 second of the car in front, within certain areas of the track, a button on the steering wheel could be pressed, which in turn opened a flap on their rear wing. This dramatically reduced the drag of the following car and resulted in a hefty increase in top speed. Thanks to this, the number of overtakes across 2011 skyrocketed at almost every race, and Valencia was no exception. 47 overtakes took place throughout the race, massively eclipsing anything that had been seen at that track before. Despite this, the track still came under fire, with Murray Walker calling it the least eventful race of an action-packed season. And Martin Brundle lamented the difficulty drivers had to overtake at the circuit in general, even with DRS. The following year saw F1's final race at Valencia. Overtakes were once again up on the previous year, with 80 recorded by the checkered flag, leading to an eventful race. 2012 had been an incredible season up to this point, with 7 different winners in the first 7 races. Valencia, race 8 of the season, broke that streak, with Fernando Alonso taking his 2nd win of the season at his home race. It was perhaps a fitting end for the circuit, with what was likely the best race of the 5 held, and a local hero taking the win. The initial deal was for Valencia to host the race for 7 years, with the final 2 being alternated with Barcelona as the Spanish Grand Prix, in a similar manner to how Hockenheim and Nürburgring were alternating the German Grand Prix at the time. However, in 2013, the Valencia government dropped out of negotiations with F1 due to financial issues, and the race was subsequently dropped from the calendar. Unfortunately, the event had never broken even, let alone made any kind of profit, and the steady rising costs of hosting a race each year eventually proved too much. Nowadays, the track lies abandoned. The streets of Valencia and its harbour have reclaimed the circuit, with only a few of the purpose-built sections remaining, albeit in a rough state. Remnants of the track remain for those knowing what to look for. The curbs, synonymous with racetracks, are still visible in some places, faded from a decade of the sun beating down upon them. It's mostly still possible to walk a lap of the circuit, though the infamous swing bridge is closed to the public, and some of the purpose-built sections are on private land and as such are often inaccessible. The Valencia Street Circuit was never one of the greats of Formula 1. It did offer up something different, however. It was genuinely an interesting circuit, even if it didn't quite work out how everyone had hoped. What do you think of the Valencia Street Circuit? Was it a major disappointment, or does it have a worse reputation than it deserves? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to see more videos just like this. Thank you for watching.